Hi everyone, welcome to Brook Valley Life. Well, to start these episodes about archery, we're going to have a look at just some definitions and what bits are called in archery, i.e. what's on the bow, what's everything's called, all different things we can measure. We'll have a look at some arrows, just see what everything's called. So when we start looking in depth at, say, certain parts of the bow and making up arrows and making strings and stuff like that, you'll know what we're talking about. I haven't been able to find anything online where someone's gone into the real basics of archery, i.e. definitions of stuff and then shown you how to build up a bow. I've seen lots about shooting and form and stuff like that. We may go into that a little bit later on down the line, but to begin with, it's just the basics. So it's more like a archery for beginners stroke anyone who wants or has had a thought about taking it up and doesn't want to look stupid when they turn up at their local club and people start talking about certain things and you haven't got a clue. So we're just going to have a look at that, and this will be the first one in the series, so I hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned. So welcome to Brook Valley Life. So we're going to be talking archery and just definitions and names of stuff you're going to hear in archery. You may not know. Some of it's simple, some of it's not so much. So when you turn up at the club or you're talking to someone about it, you'll know exactly what they mean. So we'll start off with the real basics. So what we use to drop or put the bow on, because we don't stick it on the ground, we stick it on, a bow rest. Handle sits in there, string sits in there, and it just sits horizontally. Pretty simple. They come in different shapes and sizes and colours, but this is just your bow stand for your bow. Basic one. Bow stand. Something else you're going to need is this thing. T-square, bow square, you name it. It's got a couple of different names, and all it is it can be plastic or metal. This is a aluminium one by Cartel. A couple of clips, I'll bring that up so you can see. That clips onto the string, and I don't know if you can see, but there's markings. Yeah, it's like a ruler, one side and the other. One side's metric, one side's imperial, so it works for everybody in the world. And there's also some stuff, you can just about see it there, hopefully. Yep. This you can measure virtually everything on your bow with, and when we have a quick look at the bow in a second, I can show you what we measure and what it's called when we're measuring it. So there's your bow square, invaluable piece of kit. So we'll now go and look at the bow itself. Just down here. I'm in my garage, it's raining out, so bear with me. So here's a bow set up. As we go through these couple of episodes, you'll see me building this bow up together, making a string and just showing you how we can put it together. Sorry, low ceiling. So where are we going to start? Well, the bit you hold, this nice shiny bit just here, that is called your riser. Now, the riser is what contacts you to the bow. There to, let me get that to there, if you can just see those. That is your riser, usually metal, but it can be carbon, can be plastic, can be wood. But that is your riser. So if someone says, what riser have you got, that's what they're talking about. It has a handle or a grip. This can be plastic, wood, yeah, just usually those. This is a wood one. This is a cheap riser. You'll notice that what I'm looking for at the moment is to get some cheap archery products to get people in, just to show that this cheap stuff that you can buy is quite good and does work. So there's your riser. This is an ILF riser, International Limb Fitting, and all you're talking about there is the type of fitting that allows the limb to attach into it. Now there's a couple of different types. There's this, the ILF, which is international, which most people use. There are some cheaper bows that use screw-in limbs. They're really beginner's limbs, and yeah, you're not really going to find them in competition. And the other one is called a formula limb by Hoyt. They've got their own design. There are some other companies that are making that now and making the limbs for it, but that is a Hoyt design. Now, there's your riser. What attaches to the riser and what provides the power? Well, it's these things here. Yeah, these are the limbs. And you get two, a top and a bottom one, as you can see. And again, they attach in through on this riser, the international limb fitting. And you can see just there how it clips up under there, and it also clips in just in there. Limbs. There's so much to talk about limbs. It's what the string attached to, what provides power for the bow. They can be different weights, and by that I mean how much force it's required to pull the bow back. So when someone says, "Oh yeah, what weight's your bow?" that is measured from where your string comes back, and at 28 inches from that point there, so the neck of the neck of that grip, yeah, if you come back 28 inches, that is going to be how you record the weight. And on a recurve bow, as you pull back, the weight gets more and more and more, and you measure off at 28 inches. If you go past that, it's going to get higher. If you don't get that far, it's going to be lower. So if you've got a short draw weight but you want to shoot higher weight limbs, yeah, you just go for higher draw strength limbs. So there's your limbs, and they can be made from lots of different material nowadays. These ones are wood. I've got carbon, I've got foam, I've got carbon and foam. Yeah, there's bamboo. There's lots of different ones out there, and the price of them all over the place, from the cheapest ones for about $100 up to the most expensive, crikey, $1,200, maybe more dollars, just for a set of limbs. So, limbs, riser, next thing, string. Yeah, this is what your arrow attaches to, and this is what fires the string off. So this is what you also hold. You pull it back, let it go. Made from man-made materials nowadays. Very little stretch in them. We'll talk a bit more when we have a look at strings. The strings have serving on them at each end where it goes around the limb tips. This black bit here, don't know if you can see, yeah, just about, and then in the center as well. One, it makes them slightly bigger so your arrows will fit on them, and it also provides a good bit of wear. You definitely don't want to put your arrow straight onto the string itself, because that will wear and in the end snap, whereas this is a lot stronger and it won't snap. It may come off if it hasn't been done properly, but you can serve it yourself again afterwards. So that is the main bits. Next, let's have a look at this red thing. This red thing is called a button. And again, there's lots of different ones out there, lots of different prices, cheap, expensive. This is a magnetic one, but usually they're spring loaded. What this does, one, it pushes the arrow into the center. Let me just spin this round. Just here. So it will sit in the center and not against any metal. And you can see that spring loaded just there, hopefully. Dung, dung, dung. That's your button, and it goes through a hole in your riser. Now this one has two in the riser. They're called burger holes. So if you hear of a burger hole or a button hole, that is what they are. So there's your button. Next is going to be what the arrow sits on, which is the arrow rest. This has a wrap-around arrow rest. It's this black thing. And it's called a wrap-around arrow rest because it wraps around the riser. Pretty simple, eh? This isn't difficult, but there are some things like the burger hole you may never have heard before. So, and you can also get stick-on arrow rests that stick on just around your button. Right, what next? Well, we'll start with what's in front of my face. This thing here is called a damper. just reduces vibration in your bow, and it does what it says. It dampens vibrations. You can put a weight on there for a little bit of stability and a bit of extra top weight, but that's up to you. Next, sight. And the sight goes on and is bolted into a sight block, which is bolted onto your riser. See, there's a few things you can bolt onto your riser. This is an aluminium cheap one. Looks good. So you've got your sight bar. Then you've got your adjustments on the end. This can go up and down, left and right. We'll have a look more into that later on. And there is your sight pin, which screws in. This is what you look through to look at the target. And we'll talk about aiming a bit more later down the road as well. But all you need to know is the name of things. So your sight pin, sight block. Next, these big ungainly things that you can see here. So, stabilizers. So you know what stabilizers do on a child's bike? They stop it from falling over. Yep. Well, these things do something like that. It stabilizes the archer. It gives a little bit of extra weight. And if you can push the weight away from the riser itself, you can stop all of the small, or not stop, but reduce a lot of the small movements. There's also a lump of rubber on the end with some weights. This rubber, again, dampens the vibrations going through it. So what you usually get is a long rod made from carbon. And also, hang on, let me just bring that around. Side rods as well. Yeah, these go backwards to bring some of that weight back to make the bow a bit more easier to handle. I think it's the best way of putting it. And again, they've got dampers on, rubber dampers, weights, stuff like that. And this one also has that little black thing there, which is called an extender. That just pushes everything forward again. So that's that so far. Stabilizers. Last little thing on the bow is this piece of carbon that touches this lump here. This here is called a clicker. Now your arrow fits underneath, and when you draw back and the point goes past, it comes back and hits against, let me do that. Yep, this little clicker plate just there. Now that's telling you, I'll just put this down. That's telling you that you've drawn your arrow to a certain length and you can let go. Hopefully you're sighted up on the sight and on the target. So when you let go of the arrow, you know you've pulled back far enough. It'll fly and hit where you want it to. If you didn't have that and you didn't draw back far enough, it'll go low. If you drew back too far, it'll go high because you're adding more force to it. So that is that. I've got to pick this up again. So some of the measurements we're going to take. Now, so let me push that up. We're going to be talking about a thing called brace height. Now, brace height is the distance between your string here, yeah, and the throat of your riser just here. And that throat of the riser should be in line with where your button is. So it's where your arrow sits. So all we do to measure it is we come down and we read off. And if I'm reading mine off correctly, it's 23.4 millimeters, or just over 1.25 inches. Now, by changing this brace height, it's going to change the characteristics of your bow and your tune and stuff like that. It may be loud, you drop it, it comes quiet, and it feels better. But there is a designed range which you can shoot your bow in, that the limbs and the riser are designed to shoot with. I usually keep it between 22 and 24 millimeters. Sorry guys in America if I've got any. 22 is 8 and 7/8, and 24 is 9.5. So that is what I shoot between, and I can adjust up and down, and I can adjust it quite simply by adding twists or removing twists from the string, because the string is twisted. Another measurement you're going to take is called tiller. Now tiller is the distance between there and the string at a 90-degree angle, top and bottom. Now with that tiller, is the same. It's neutral, so it should shoot okay. Sorry, I'm just putting the bow back down. Trying to anyway. There we go. Sorry about that. So it's called a neutral tiller, so they're equal. So maybe 19 centimeters on both. However, some people prefer when your tiller is, say, they call it positive or negative, where the distance at the top is shorter or longer than the distance at the bottom. And I've found that having one or the other will, when I pull back, either the bow will rise quite simply and go on target, or I'll have trouble and it tries to pull me down. It's really weird when you're shooting. Sometimes you're there, you want to bring it up, you're at full draw, and you just can't get your arm up high enough. So that's called tiller. So you've got brace height and tiller. They're two things you're going to measure. And thinking about it, I think that's about it. Yeah, there's some other things like limb bolts, which are in the riser, which are limbs, but we'll have a look at that when we look at the riser. But this is just the basics. So there's a bow. This bow is an Olympic recurve bow, and everything on there is what you're allowed. If you're shooting bare bow, you may have the riser, the limbs, the string. You may have a couple of weights and a button. That's it. And that has to fit through a certain size ring, but we're talking Olympic recurve. So there's that. Next thing we're going to look at is your arrows. Now, arrows can be made from different things. We'll have a look at that, but just having a look at what the makeup of an arrow. So you've got this long bit, which can be wood, could be aluminium, could be carbon, could be a mixture of both. Aluminium and carbon, that is, not wood and carbon. But that is called your arrow shaft. Yep, comes in different sizes, and there's components you can put onto it. First component we're going to look at, point. Let me have a look, just there we go. So that's an arrow point, and it slides inside the shaft up to about there on these ones, and it's glued in position. Now the other type of arrow shaft you can get is a screw-in one. And as you can see, it screws in. Simple as that. So it's got a thread on it, and just up inside there, I don't know if you can see, doubt it, there's a little screw thread that's been glued in. So you can change them. I could put broadheads if I was hunting into these arrows, but I don't really use these arrows anymore. So that is the one end, points. So point, shaft. At this end, I'll take this little green thing off. That there is called a pin nock, or a pin, and it fits in, again glued in up to about there on the arrow shaft, and you can get nocks. Sorry about this, they're tiny. There you go, this is a green one, hopefully that's focusing. Yep, that fit onto the pin nock. These come in small and large, and all they do, concentrating, got my tongue out, is just slide onto the pin nock. Yeah, and they're nice and tight. Now why do we use that instead of using one that just fits up the end of the shaft like that? That's the other type you can get. As you can see, pushes in, where you go. Pretty simple, solid. Well, it comes down to the protection of your arrows. If I was to shoot two arrows in the same spot and that was to hit, that metal pin is likely to knock that off at an angle. Yes, you may not hit the center, but you're protecting the back end of your arrow shaft. Arrow shafts can be quite expensive. Now if I've got one like this, it just goes up inside, and I was to hit that back end spot on, and it does happen, I've done it myself, yeah, that would go right up inside. It's called an arrow, a Robin Hood. And yeah, you break at least the arrow you've hit, and you may even damage the arrow that hit it as well. So that is why we have, or I use, pin nocks. Just goes on the end. Then you've got your nocks themselves. They come in different colours, different shapes here, or different sizes I should say. In the throat, that's the throat of the nock, and that's what fits onto your string. The other thing you're going to find on an arrow, vanes or feathers or spin wings. And when we put our arrows together, that's what we're going to be looking at. These are the arrows I'm going to be making up later on, so you can see I've come back to do one before. So these are plastic vanes. You can get feathers as well, about this size, maybe even bigger, that do the same thing. And you can also get a thing called spin wings. There's pieces of plastic that are a lot smaller than this, that bent over, and they spin the arrow quite fast, like that. Boom, that's spinning. And it allows for greater stability when you shoot. Great, and they give less drag. Great at long distances. So there's the arrows. Now a couple of other things you are going to need. First, you need something on your fingers, because if you've got, even just what I'm using here, I've got £40 on my competition bow, and I'm not sure what this is. We'll measure this later on, but I think it's around £32 on your fingers. If you were just to use your fingers on their own, you would start cutting away just around there where they sit. It gets real painful. So we have a thing called a tab. Yeah, and this tab just fits onto your hand. This is a spacer, so you don't trap the arrow in between. So what happens is, that's on the string, put your hand around the string, and as you can see there's movement there, so you can't grab it with your fingers, and you pull back and then you let go and the string comes off the leather. And again, lots of different types of tabs out there. These are Olympic recurve ones because you have 2 fingers below, 1 finger above the arrow. Bare bow, you usually got 3 below, and they come in different sizes, different shapes, different colors, different prices. Yeah. This is an AAE KSL Gold, which is about $115, and this is a Avalon Classic, which I think was about $20. So you can see there's a lot of different in prices, and you will find one you like. So do that. Arm guard. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're a great Olympic shooter, beginner. You'll notice most of them, especially for Olympic recurve, wear an arm guard, and it's just to stop the string hitting you on your arm just there. Some people hyperextend and it bends up the other way and their arm pushes in. You've got to try and do that to push it out, but every now and again you will hit your arm, and if you don't have that on, the string's moving quite fast, and boy does it hurt. You only do it 3 times, well I did, drew blood as well, but it can leave a massive great bruise. It hurts, you won't do it again, so you try your best. So some other things you may want is a quiver, which your arrows go in. Arrow puller. You may think, what do I need an arrow puller for? When these things hit a foam target, which a lot of people use nowadays, yeah, unless you use silicone on the end or have something like this that's got a special coating on, trying to pull them out can be quite hard. And if you just pull them by hard, you can add an angle, snap, or bend it if you've got aluminium arrows. Aluminium or aluminum for you guys over in the States. So what you get is a piece of rubber that can open up like that, fits around, puts on, gives you a bit more leverage to pull it out. Arrow puller. Yep, good bit of kit. Now, is there anything else you're gonna worry about? Any other definitions you need? I don't think so. We can look at target faces later on, different sizes and when you use them. I think that's going to be about it for now. This is already at 20 minutes and I don't want to take it too long. So there's some of the definitions you need to understand or need to know before, well, you don't need to know it before you go, but it's nice to know it. So when someone starts talking archery to you, you understand, or you know basics of the bow and all the stuff you're using. So I hope this was informative for you. The upcoming videos are going to go in depth a bit more on the certain parts like risers, limbs, arrows, strings, stuff like that, and then putting the bow together, and then we'll shoot afterwards. If you've liked this, please come back and see how we progress this. Please hit the like button, subscribe, the bell, all the other buttons out there, God knows what they are. Again, this is directed at beginners, anybody who wants to start. You can be old, you can be young, you can do whatever you want. So please enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye bye.